Hi everyone, I hope you're having a peaceful day. Today we'll explore a story that begins at a sunlit rural market where Sam is selling oranges and a mother suddenly appears, pleading for mercy for her imprisoned daughter, the same woman who once hurt Sam and Lee. Will forgiveness bloom again between pain and justice, or will the past remain unhealed? If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next episode of Sam and Lee. The rural market glowed beneath the morning sun, roofs glittering with dew, and the smell of oranges floating through the air like honey. Sam stood behind her stall, arranging the fruits into neat pyramids, soft, yellow, and still cool from dawn. The digital scale clicked, and for a while that sound felt like the rhythm of life she'd earned back. "Very sweet oranges, sis," she said with her usual quiet cheer, handing over a small plastic bag. A few coins clinked into her hand. It was ordinary, simple, the kind of morning that promised nothing bad could happen. The market hummed with its familiar chorus, vendors calling out prices, children chasing between stalls, someone laughing too loudly over a good bargain. Life was messy, bright, and whole. Then she saw Mrs. Tien. The older woman stood by the vegetable stand across the path, clutching a bunch of carrots and onions, her eyes swollen as if she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, Sam thought of turning away. She remembered too well whose mother that was, but something about those trembling hands stopped her. When Mrs. Tien finally approached, the air between them seemed to thin. "My daughter, in prison," she whispered, voice breaking under the noise. "Trial soon. She's suffering. So thin, so scared." Her words fell like dry leaves over the noise of the market, soft but impossible to ignore. Sam's fingers froze on the orange she was about to weigh. Around them, laughter still rose, but she no longer heard it. "I fear the sentence will be heavy," Mrs. Tien continued, her voice trembling. "I came here to buy vegetables, but I can't even think straight. Please, Sam, tell Lee. Ask him just once to help her." Sam didn't answer right away. The oranges gleamed under the sunlight, bright and perfect, and yet something about them felt heavy now, like each one carried the weight of the past. The mother's plea hung in the air between them. Around them, life went on. A woman arguing over change, a motorbike passing, the chatter of neighbors. But inside Sam, the world grew still. She nodded gently, more out of instinct than decision. "I'll tell him," she said. Mrs. Tien exhaled, relief and shame tangled together. Her hands shook as she handed over money for a few vegetables she didn't seem to need. Sam could see how deeply regret had carved its mark, not just on her face, but in the way she could no longer meet anyone's eyes. When the woman left, Sam tried to continue selling, but the rhythm was gone. The market still buzzed, yet it all felt distant now. Laughter muffled, colors dimmer. She packed the leftover oranges for juice, but her thoughts drifted toward Lee at the station, and to Bitch, the daughter who had once hurt them both. By the time she closed her stall, clouds had begun gathering over the hills, and the scent of rain mixed with citrus lingered on her hands. That afternoon, Mrs. Tien stood trembling at the police station gate. The building looked colder than she'd remembered. Grey walls, narrow windows, the faint echo of footsteps from inside. She clutched her visitor's pass like a lifeline. "I beg you," she told the young officer at the front desk, voice shaking. I only wish to see my daughter for a few minutes." Officer Duke nodded, expression unreadable, and disappeared down the hall. Moments later, he returned with a short nod toward the captain's office. "You'll see her. 10 minutes, under supervision." Behind the door, Lee sat by his desk, papers spread across the surface, his face calm but tired. When he heard who the visitor was, his expression barely shifted. He simply said, "Let her in. 10 minutes." His tone was firm, but beneath it, there was something almost weary, as if he, too, knew what forgiveness could cost. Down the hall, Officer Hui led a frail figure from behind the bars. Bitch walked slowly, her wrists trembling, face pale under the harsh light. The air smelled faintly of iron and disinfectant, that particular scent of punishment. When the door to the visiting room opened, the mother rushed forward before anyone could stop her. "Mom!" The cry came raw, stripped of everything except pain. They clung to each other tightly, sobbing into one another's shoulders, as if the years of pride and silence had never existed. "I'm suffering, Mom," Bitch gasped through tears. "The food is bad. The nights are so long. I don't know how to keep going." Mrs. Tien's hands shook as she brushed the hair from her daughter's face. "I raised you to win," she whispered, voice breaking. "But I didn't teach you to be kind. You won too much and lost everything." They sat like that, two broken halves pressed together, while the clock on the wall ticked with cruel precision. For a fleeting moment, the concrete walls didn't feel so cold. Hope flickered there, small, trembling, but real. When the guard finally knocked to signal the end, Mrs. Tien rose reluctantly. She squeezed her daughter's hands one last time. "Hold on," she said, voice thick. "Maybe someone out there still believes in your change." Her words were meant for Bish, but part of her hoped Sam and Lee would hear them too. Later that week, the police station felt unusually warm. The usual chatter about reports and patrols had quieted, replaced by the soft scent of glutinous rice and sugar. Sam arrived carrying a basket of cakes wrapped neatly in banana leaves. She smiled as she entered, nodding at the officers. "Brought something sweet to thank everyone for helping with the farm repairs." Her tone was light, but her heart beat faster than it should. Lee looked up from his paperwork, eyes softening when he saw her. "Smells good," he said. "You always bring peace into this place." He opened one of the boxes and laughter rippled through the room as his colleagues gathered around to share. Sam waited, fingers twisting around the strap of her basket. "Lee," she said finally, voice lower, steadier. "Can I visit Big?" The room quieted for a heartbeat. Even the laughter seemed to hold its breath. Lee looked at her for a long time, measuring something beyond her words. Then slowly, he nodded. "If that's what you want, I'll allow it." Something in his tone, a mixture of caution and respect, made her chest ache. She knew what that decision cost him. As he called Officer Hui to make arrangements, Sam exhaled quietly. Around her, the others went back to their jokes, to the sweetness of cake and small talk. But inside, she was already walking toward that visiting room, toward the past she thought she'd buried. The visiting room was small and dim, with a single bulb swaying slightly from the ceiling. Its light made the metal bars gleam like wet stone. Sam sat alone at the wooden table, her palms flat, her breath steady but shallow. The scent of disinfectant and old paper hung thick in the air. She could hear the faint echo of footsteps before she saw her. Bitch walked in, thinner than Sam remembered, her face pale, her eyes tired but alert, like someone who had been awake through too many nights of regret. When their eyes met, time paused. "Sam?" Bitch's voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "Why are you here?" Sam took a long breath, her voice quiet and even. "Because I wanted to see you, and because I've already forgiven you." The words startled Bitch. She blinked, her lips trembling, as if searching for air. "Forgiven me? After everything I did? I hurt you. I hurt Lee. I destroyed." Sam shook her head gently. "You didn't destroy us. You broke something, yes, but we learned how to mend it. The farm stands again, the house feels like home again. We're rebuilding, Bitch. Just slower now, more carefully." Silence filled the small room like water filling a glass. Bitch lowered her eyes, her voice barely audible. "Every night I see it again. That day, the way Lee fell trying to stop me. I see his blood, his face, the look in your eyes. It doesn't leave." Sam's heart tightened, but her tone remained steady, soft, like a mother speaking to a child. "Punishment teaches nothing if you can't forgive yourself. You have to start again, even from here." Bitch looked up, tears brimming. "How do you do that? How do you start again after ruining someone's life?" Sam's eyes softened. "By choosing not to ruin your own anymore." She reached across the table, her fingers resting lightly near Bitch's cuffed hands. "Lee once told me something. That forgiveness isn't a reward, it's a release, for both sides." For a moment, Bitch didn't speak, then slowly her tears fell. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything, for making you afraid, for making him bleed, for turning your kindness into pain." Sam didn't answer right away. The clock ticked, and outside, a crow cawed over the compound. "You've said sorry," she said quietly. "Now you have to live like you mean it." Bitch's lips trembled into something like a smile. "Do you think Lee hates me?" Sam shook her head. "No, but he hasn't forgotten. Some wounds don't need forgetting. They just need time to stop hurting." Bitch's shoulders sank, as though something heavy had finally been set down. "I'll try," she said softly. "If I ever leave this place, I'll make it right, even if all I can do is be someone better than who I was." Sam smiled faintly. "That's enough." When the guard knocked gently on the door, time had already slipped away. Sam stood, reluctant to go. "Take care of your health," she said. "The body remembers pain longer than the mind does." Bitch nodded, tears still running, eyes full of something new. Not guilt, but hope. As Sam left, she glanced back one last time. Through the bars, Bitch's face looked younger somehow, lit by that small, uncertain light of redemption. Outside, the air felt softer than before. The afternoon sun had mellowed, brushing the courtyard in pale gold. Lee was waiting near the steps, his uniform jacket hanging loose, the tired lines of his face gentler in the light. "You went through with it?" he said quietly. Sam nodded. "I did." He searched her face, maybe looking for regret, but found only calm. "And?" "She's not who she was," Sam replied. "Not yet someone new, but she's trying." Lee's eyes lingered on her, and then on the distant gates beyond which Bitch's world remained locked. Sometimes trying is the only proof a person can give. They didn't talk much after that. Words felt unnecessary. They stood side by side for a while, watching the clouds drift toward the hills. When a motorbike horn sounded from the road, Sam turned to him. "I'll walk," she said. "I promised I'd help with the trellis at the farm." "You sure?" he asked. "I need the quiet." He nodded, as if understanding completely. "Then I'll see you this afternoon." As she walked away, the gravel crunched softly under her sandals. The road was long, bordered by rice fields shimmering in the sun. The scent of wet grass carried through the wind, cool and sweet. Every few steps she thought of Bitch, of the thin girl behind the bars, of Mrs. Tien's trembling hands at the market, of Lee's quiet patience. It all wove together, a tapestry of pain and forgiveness, worn but beautiful. When she reached the edge of the fields, the sky had turned a deeper shade of blue. She could see her farm from there, the green rows, the steady trellis waiting to be tied. Life, waiting to continue. For the first time that day, she let herself smile, not out of relief but understanding. Forgiveness, she realized, didn't mean forgetting the past. It meant walking forward with it, lighter than before. Forgiveness isn't about setting someone free. It's about loosening the chains we keep around our own hearts. Sometimes the hardest part of healing is accepting that love and pain often share the same quiet space.